Alright, what's going on everyone out there on YouTube, NES Ruler, and welcome to a brand new review. And this time around, we'll be checking out a film that was sent to me review by Synapse Films, and you can pick this up on Blu-ray right now at all your favorite online retailers. It is a film from 1976, and it is titled Massacre at Central High. So I first saw this movie back in 2018. We did a top 10 of 1976 on the 22 shots of moods and horror. And this was one of the movies that I actually checked out when I was prepping for that episode. And I knew nothing about it. And at the time, it was only really available in some not so good quality formats. So I think I've watched it online somewhere. And I really, really enjoyed it. It actually made my list. I think it made even my 5 or 6 spot of 1976. So I was super bummed that there wasn't a high quality release of this coming out. And then about a year or so after that episode aired, I started to read that Synapse was starting to restore the film and release it on Blu-ray. And I was very excited to hear that. And if you guys don't know about Synapse, they really do like to take their times with their restorations and do them right. They're not somebody who will release something in a short period of time. They really, really take their time when it comes to their releases and their restoration. So it took a couple years for this to finally come out. And about, I don't know, a year or so ago, a Steelbook edition of this movie came out on Blu-ray. And now we have the standard keep case edition of Massacre at Central High from Synapse Films. So, how does it look? Because I think that's what everybody always wants to know when we talk about a film that hasn't had a solid release before. It looks great. Absolutely fantastic. Once again, Synapse crushed it out of the water with this transfer. It looks just absolutely great. It was scanned and supervised by the director. It was a very interesting guy. We'll get into that in a little bit when we talk about the features. But the transfer is really, really, really fantastic. And it looks really, really great. So basically this movie, we follow David. David is this new kid in this high school. And in this high school, it's ran by this clique of students. They're kind of like the rulers of the school. And you don't see any adults in this entire film until the last 5 minutes of this movie. It's all kids the entire film. And that's why I think it's very, very interesting. They run the place. The kids and the teenagers run the place. And I think that's what I like most about this movie is you never see any adults, any authoritarian figures until the end of the film. It's super, super interesting. I don't really think I noticed it the first time I watched this, but now this time watching, I was like, man, there really isn't any adults in this movie until the last 5 or 10 minutes of it. It's really, really interesting. So we follow David. David comes to this. He's a good-hearted kid, but he has some baggage from back in the day. And his friend, what's his name? I should know. His friend Mark tries to get him to join this clique and become part of this this bully group that is basically running this high school. And David is not for that. He has a different change of heart. And as the film goes on, these people start to do some really awful things. And it ultimately pisses off David to the brink that he starts picking them off one by one. And that's where the film basically gets its story and moves forward as David gets his revenge, if you want to call it, on this group of bullies. And just a really interesting film and quite a good cast. Kimberly Beck's in this movie, who is, I don't know if you can see it up there, she was in Friday 4, one of her first movies. And also we have Daryl Murray and Andrew Stevens, who was in The Fury. So, kids who were up and coming, and there's a really great 40-minute documentary featurette on this release that brings back a whole bunch of the cast. And I highly recommend if you guys pick up this release that you check out that 40-minute documentary, because some of the stories that were told when they were making this movie is absolutely hilarious. There's one story in particular I want to talk about. So when they were making this movie, there's a scene where this kid opens up this locker and it absolutely just annihilates him, just explodes tenfold. So the first time they were shooting that scene, they opened up the locker and something happened, and it was just like little Chinese fireworks explosions. And it really kind of pissed off the director. So the special effects guy got got kind of upset that the director was yelling at him, so he put a little bit too much powder in the next take, and it ultimately just absolutely annihilated the stunt person, as well as it destroyed all the lights and everything. I mean, it made a huge ass explosion. And if you watch the movie, you know the scene I'm talking about. But it's just an absolutely hilarious story. I was listening to that and I was like, that's just independent filmmaking at its finest right there. I mean, you don't hear about those kind of things in Hollywood films. But back in the day, I mean, it's just funny. And then he stuck his head out of the hole where the explosion happened and said, was that big enough for you? I mean, it's just an absolutely hilarious story. It made me laugh so hard. So there is a really great feature, and like I said, they have a whole bunch of the cast and the crew, the first AD and the DP, and a whole bunch of other people talking about it. I highly recommend you check out that feature. It's a really great feature, one of my favorite features that I've seen on a release in quite a while. It's really, really good. So this is just a really great pre-Heathers kind of a film. You could definitely see that this film probably influenced Heathers, and when it came out, it really didn't take off. It didn't really hit the scene until the 80s, and then when it was in the 80s, Roger Ebert saw it and some other people started to talk about it, and then the film ultimately started to build into a cult status, and finally it has a release here from Synapse Films, and I highly recommend it. It's quite a great film, quite different, and some really great acting from these unknown actors at the time, and just a really nice package. So this is the basic package like you get from most of your Synapse Films releases. You have your catalog, which talks about all their other films, and you have just the Blu-ray disc right there with David on the cover. So that is my review of Massacre at Central High from Synapse Films. Highly recommend you pick up this release. Support Synapse. They do some great work with their restorations and bring some of these unknown cult films to our hands. So that is my review of Massacre at Central High. If you guys like this review, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/NESRuler22. Hope everybody is doing well, and I shall talk to you guys soon. See you guys.